Testing, testing. Hi, this is Liz. Welcome to Tuesday. If you have ever been to the Derry Public Library, you probably know me as the resident movie person at the information desk. If this is your first time watching, welcome. I'm usually at the information desk at the Derry Public Library, and I am the resident movie person, or at least the one with the most eclectic taste. So today what I'm doing is I'm giving, as I do every Tuesday now, Netflix recommendations for those who have that streaming service. And today I have a few binge-worthy TV series, a few mini-series, and some great movies that are up on Netflix. We're going to start with television. In terms of binge-worthy, I think right now we want something a bit light, a bit funny, and I would recommend the show Grace and Frankie. It stars Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, two-thirds of 9 to 5. Obviously, two very accomplished comedic actresses. It's in season 6 right now. It's about two older women. They find out their husbands are in love with other people, and not just that, they're in love with each other's husbands. So these women who really ended up not liking each other at first become really good friends. And it's one where if you enjoy something like, say, The Golden Girls, you are going to love this show. I could just watch Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin play off each other all day. And I guess my one complaint for the show would be, why has there not been a Dolly Parton cameo yet? It's right there. On to a mini series. It's a bit of a heavier subject, but it came out last year, and I thought it was fantastic. The mini series When They See Us. And this was produced and directed by Ava DuVernay, who you might know from directing Selma and Wrinkle in Time. And it's about the case of the Central Park Five, or as some people now call them, the Exonerated Five. Some historical background: in the late 80s, there was a heinous crime in New York. A jogger was attacked in Central Park, and it was extremely not controversial. Basically, everyone in the city was scared, and everyone in the city wanted justice done for this victim. But in the search for trying to find the person who did it, they ended up basically railroading these 5 young men. There was no DNA evidence. They all went to jail anyway. So it's a dramatization of that case. And again, thankfully, in reality, they were eventually exonerated. But it's a hard thing to watch, because you're basically watching this reeling, oh, this really happened. But it's an important thing that more people should know about. And if you do watch this and you're interested in that case, Ken Burns did a really good documentary about this, I think back in the aughts. So I would look for that as well. Another mini series that I thought was great, this one's a little bit older, and it's also about a fairly famous case, this time from the 90s, American Crime Story, The People versus O.J. Simpson. I think when this was first announced, everyone was kind of a little like, is this going to be campy and weird like American Horror Story? And it actually wasn't. It took the subject very seriously. I think the performances are all fantastic, and it's a good look at that case. It's also based off a very good book on the subject, which is The Run of His Life by Jeffrey Toobin, who you probably have seen on CNN at this point. I think that was the book that kind of broke him into the mainstream. So definitely recommend that as well. It's 10 episodes. If you want something that you can binge, but you also don't have to devote like 15 seasons to. And the last show I'll recommend is this one that's definitely not as well known, but it's gotten some great buzz. It's called Raising Dion. It's about this young boy. He's about 5, 6 years old. He has superpowers. The show's not really about him. It's about his mother trying to figure out how to raise a superpowered boy. It's got a lot of heart. I think the acting is really good. The effects are a little iffy. It's not the highest budget show, but if you're looking for a different type of superhero series that isn't as nihilistic as The Boys and might be a little bit more family friendly, Raising Dion is definitely something you should look for. All right, on to my film recommendations. The first is a documentary that just came out on Netflix called Crip Camp. This is about a camp for people with disabilities, and rather than being background characters or sort of just there for inspirational purposes, they're basically here giving their own opinions, sort of owning their own narrative. And it is something that you rarely see even in documentaries. Is someone with a disability, be it physical or mental. In this case, it more errs on the side of physical disability, but you rarely see them really in charge of their own narrative. So if you want a good kind of heartwarming documentary that, gives a voice to people who usually don't have representation, Crip Camp is for you. Next is we're going back into the 90s. I find that I'm doing that a lot with the cult classic The Craft. If you were a teen girl in about 96, 97, this movie was very important. It's about four outcast high school girls who become witches. It's, I guess, very 90s is the best way to describe it. But if you're a fan of Sabrina, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, this movie's for you. I don't want to say it holds up, but I still enjoy watching it. It's a good 100 minutes. You don't need to think a lot watching it. I think it's fun. Up next, we have The Social Network, which, in my opinion, robbed of Best Picture for 2010. That was the year the King's Speech won. I think this movie, it's one of David Fincher's best, and I actually think it's the best thing Aaron Sorkin has ever done, probably because he had a lot of supervision and input from David Fincher. Not a Aaron Sorkin fan personally. And I still to this day think that had this movie won Best Picture instead of The King's Speech, this movie would have stayed in the public consciousness a bit more, and we probably wouldn't have been as shocked when Facebook turned out to be not so great, and Mark Zuckerberg turned out to be not so great. Maybe I'm like, this movie kind of warned us back then. But I think if you want a good, movie for adults, this is for you. Although it's a little scary to watch it and realize, like, wow, this all happened less than 20 years ago, and just how much of an influence Facebook has become in our lives. And I say this as I'm on Facebook Live. Up next, we're going to go indie with the film Frances Ha. So this was written and starring Greta Gerwig. By now, we probably know Greta Gerwig as the director of Little Women and Lady Bird. But this was sort of her big debut into the world of creating film, and she wrote this. Noah Baumbach directed it, and it's about a girl who, she's out of college, she doesn't quite have a lot of direction as to where to go. It's a story we've heard before, but there's a lot of heart to this. At the center of this is her friendship with her college roommate, and in the end, she actually does. Spoiler, she figures it out. But if you want to see where Greta Gerwig kind of started out, where she transitioned from acting to being more of an active player in the production of films, this is a little cultural point for you. So definitely check out Frances Ha. So up next is a movie that took the world by storm when it came out. And so if you watched me yesterday, I talked about Akira Kurosawa and how I think some people are scared of subtitles, but if you learn to get past them, there's a whole lot of great movies out there. And this was one of the movies that proved that, yes, Americans can watch subtitled movies, and it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This was an Ang Lee film. I believe it's definitely a multinational production. I believe it's American, Chinese, and Taiwanese. But I remember when this came out, everyone wanted to go see it. And again, it's an action film, so if you're not super comfortable with subtitles, you don't need to worry too much because there's a whole lot of time where you won't need to pay attention. But again, if you are sort of looking to get into foreign film, this might be a good introduction to it. And also, if you're an action fan, the action in this movie is fantastic. And I always love seeing Michelle Yeoh on screen. She is a fantastic actress. And also Chow Yun-fat, who one of these days I'm going to get into it more, but was in one of the greatest action films of all time, John Woo's Hard Boiled. So the last two movies are going to be my picks of the day for Netflix. The first is Jonathan Demme's Philadelphia. I was very happy when I saw that this was on here. I think I'd only really seen this movie in chunks. I'd never seen it the whole way through. And having watched it, I think it's a fantastic movie. If you're not familiar with it, this is an early 90s film. Tom Hanks plays a lawyer who's fired from his firm, and he believes it is because he's being discriminated against because he has AIDS, and Denzel Washington is the lawyer who argues for him in court. And it's more than just a courthouse drama. There's a lot of humanity to this, and it is a very revolutionary film, or was when it came out, because this was the first mainstream depiction of someone who is gay and had AIDS that was an entirely really sympathetic portrayal. You had it before in more independent movies, but not in, movies that played in 300 plus theaters and starred Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks. Speaking of which, this is also the first big movie in which Tom Hanks has a dramatic role as well. It still completely holds up as a film. The only thing that will seem outdated is the very, good fact that the attitudes portrayed in this movie really aren't mainstream anymore. If anything, that's good that it seems outdated for that. But again, if you want to see a movie that's culturally important and relevant, Philadelphia is one of those. And again, if you're a fan of Philadelphia, great shots of the city. And I just personally love Jonathan Demme, so any movie he directs, I'll give it a shot. And the final film is a movie I'm so glad it's finally on Netflix, because I've been talking about it for about 2 years. And that is The Death of Stalin. So this is directed by Armando Iannucci. He gave us In the Thick of It, and more famously over here, Veep. And this is a story about the power grab slash power vacuum that happened after Stalin's death. And it's Banality of Evil, the movie. And he doesn't do it as a drama. He does it as a black comedy. And it absolutely works so well. Because if you do know anything about some of USSR history, it can get a little comedic in a way that where it's like, if this was fiction, I would consider it to be too out there. You have Steve Buscemi as Khrushchev. You have, well, Jeffrey Tambor is not a great guy, but he is great as Molotov. You have he's Malenkov. You have Michael Palin as Molotov. And so, fantastic cast. It's a good historical feature. Some of the events on the timeline from Stalin's death are sped up, but a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie did happen in real life. And as far as a comedy about the terror of the USSR goes, it works because the people of the USSR, the people who live there, they're never the butt of the joke. They're just living under these scheming, horrible people. And it's the people in power that are always the object of the laughs. So if you watch anything on Netflix, I would say watch either Philadelphia or The Death of Stalin. Because I know I've been raving about Death of Stalin for at least 2 years now. And so I'm glad it's on a platform where a lot of people can see it. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. And I will see you tomorrow when we talk about what is on Amazon Prime. Have a great day.